My fiancé, Xianxi, is obsessively pursuing a poor female university student. The girl is aloof and proud, unwilling to be a caged bird for the wealthy and powerful to toy with. She stopped my car in the pouring rain, her expression defiant. "Miss Lee, please keep your fiancé in check. I may be poor, but I am not someone to be humiliated at will." To avoid humiliating her, Xianxi turned around, broke off our engagement, and ostentatiously married that girl with a lavish 200 million wedding. 3 years later, I was engaged once more. Xianxi showed up uninvited, drank himself into a gastric hemorrhage at the engagement party, and was rushed to the hospital for emergency treatment. Yi Qingshuang, now Mrs. Xie, stormed into my office and demanded through gritted teeth, "Now everyone knows you're the unforgettable white moonlight Xianxi can't get over. I've become the laughingstock of our social circle. You must be feeling pretty smug, Li Manchu, aren't you?" 1. Everything fell silent. As everyone knows, the Li and Xie families had a huge falling out over a female student, which ended with her marrying into the wealthy family. Who would have thought this whole drama would have a sequel? I couldn't help but frown slightly. After 3 years as a society wife, is Yi Qingshuang still this reckless? I said indifferently, "Mrs. Xie, I don't believe we are on such familiar terms that you can address me so casually. Next time, please call me Director Li or Miss Li. If you need to see me, make an appointment through my secretary." Yi Qingshuang's face paled, visibly embarrassed. My expression remained as calm as still water as I looked at her coolly. She was decked out in designer labels from head to toe, a world away from the penniless student she'd been 3 years ago. Only her expression remained, as aloof and unyielding as ever. 3 years ago, Xianxi told me he was captivated by the unique aura Yi Qingshuang possessed, poor, yet possessing an unshakable integrity, a quality our kind so often lacks. In this circle, people put profit above all else. Even marriage is just another tool to be leveraged. It's all too common for couples in arranged marriages to lead separate lives and see other people. So when someone told me that Xianxi was obsessively pursuing a girl from the Chinese literature department, I didn't pay it any mind. I didn't care when Yi Qingshuang came looking for me either. But I truly never expected that Xianxi would break off our engagement for her sake. I asked him calmly, "Are you sure about this, Xianxi? I don't really care what you do on the side." Xianxi's face darkened at my words. After a long silence, he said, "She's different from those other women. She doesn't want my money at all. Of course she's different. She wants far more than those women on the outside. I find it rather laughable, in the filthy mire of a noble family. Someone as innocent and naive as Xianxi could actually be raised." I agreed to call off the engagement. The price was for the Xie family to hand over that 100 million yuan project in Pingjing to me. After we reached an agreement, Xianxi suddenly asked me as he was leaving, "Manchu, did you ever love me?" I didn't answer him at the time, but the truth is, I did have feelings for him once. 2. My parents' marriage was also arranged for business reasons. My mother was unfortunate. She fell in love with my father within a marriage built on the exchange of interests, but my father was a playboy. He fooled around and ultimately died in his mistress's bed. My mother couldn't accept it. She fell gravely ill, and after recovering, she turned her heart fully to Buddhism, withdrawing from worldly affairs. My grandfather was furious and deeply disappointed by my father's undignified death, and that resentment extended to me as well. I gradually became a marginalized figure within the family, someone who was overlooked. That was until Xianxi came to visit. He gave me a piece of chocolate, and we slowly became inseparable playmates. That's when my grandfather finally took notice of me again. After I graduated from university, my grandfather decided to choose a new successor. I wasn't the only candidate, because besides my father, my grandfather also had 2 daughters and an illegitimate son, Li Yuran. My aunts were content to reap the benefits without putting in the work, showing no interest in taking over the family business. This left Li Yuran, the illegitimate son, as my greatest rival. Every day, I operated under immense pressure, striving to achieve something tangible to prove my capabilities. I performed quite well, even multiplying the company's profits several times over. Yet, none of that earned me any special regard from my grandfather, that is, until my engagement to The Xie family is a venerable, established clan on par with the Li family, A marriage alliance between our two houses would undoubtedly be a mutually beneficial partnership. It was then that grandfather formally announced that I would be taking over the Li family as the next generation heir. Xie has rescued me from peril on 2 separate occasions. It's only natural that I would develop feelings for him. But all those trivial flutters of the heart became insignificant the moment Yi Qingshuang appeared. I won't be a failure like my father, nor a coward like my mother. I will only ever be Li Manchu, standing at the pinnacle. No one will ever drag me down from here, not even love. 3. Yi Qingshuang wept silently. She truly possessed an ethereal, delicate beauty, and her tears gave her a heartbreakingly fragile air. Yet, the words that left her lips were utterly absurd. Miss Li, could you please be merciful and step away from my marriage with Yang Ci? I really can't take it anymore. The crowd erupted in an uproar. I can already imagine the headlines tonight. Li Group's female CEO meddles in ex-fiancé's marriage. Li Manchu and Xie, the ties that still bind. The secretary began clearing the room and warned everyone not to post anything online. I was growing impatient, and my voice turned cold. Mrs. Xie, out of respect for the Xie family, I'll let your nonsense slide today. If there's a next time, don't blame me for not being polite. With that, I called security and had Yi Qingshuang escorted out. That night, the moment I pushed open the door to get home, someone yanked me inside and pinned me against the wall. A man's clear, cool voice sounded in my ear, tinged with a hint of grievance. Man, I'm jealous. Drinking on purpose until he coughed up blood. Serves him right. I broke free from his grasp. Pei Shuji, how did you get the code to my apartment? Pei Shuji's dark eyes were glistening as he looked at me, appearing rather docile. Grandpa Li asked me to move in, he said. It was only then that I noticed the room, which had felt somewhat empty before, was now filled with many of his belongings. It added a touch of lived-in warmth to the space. I couldn't help but frown. His gaze never left me. Seeing me frown, he immediately apologized with a pitiful look. Please don't be mad. If you're not okay with it, I'll pack up and leave right now. With that, he made a move to start gathering his things. I grabbed his arm. Forget it. We're getting married at the end of the year anyway. His eyes lit up instantly, and he looked at me with eager excitement. Are you tired? Would you like me to show you around? I was curious to see what else he'd been up to. So I followed him into the house without a word. Looking up, I saw a massive poster of the two of us hanging from the second-floor mezzanine. The whole scene was just absurdly comical. I couldn't help but laugh. I did a little decorating. Do you like it? He looked at me with eager, pleading eyes. Just like a puppy waiting for its owner's praise. It was hard to believe that the man standing before me was the same legendary, ruthless titan of the business world. When Pei Shuji was 18, the head of the Pei family died unexpectedly, forcing him to take over the family business in haste. In just 3 years, he built a vast commercial empire around the Pei Group. With assets beyond measure, the Pei family soared, rising to surpass all the other prominent families in Pingjing. And he's only 21 now, 5 years younger than I am. Whenever I saw him in a professional setting before, I always thought he seemed wise beyond his years, reserved, composed, and inscrutable. Today, however, I finally caught a glimpse of the youthful spirit you'd expect from someone his age. Not wanting to dampen his mood, I casually offered a compliment. You picked a great photo. Pei Shuji was taken aback for a moment, his fair ears instantly flushing a deep red, the blush threatening to spread from his neck all the way to his face. He murmured, I think this one looks the best, too. I was taken aback. I suddenly realized how overly intimate we looked in the photo, which made my compliment sound rather suggestive. Feeling awkward, I forced myself to stay calm. I'm tired, I'm going to get some rest. With that, he went straight upstairs. I wasn't surprised that grandfather would let Pei Shuji move in. Ever since his serious illness forced him to step back from the spotlight, and my father's unexpected death, the Li family has been in a state of decline, even with my tireless efforts day in and day out. I've only just managed to halt the family's precipitous decline and stabilize the overall situation. Revitalizing the Li family is an incredibly difficult task. He had pinned his hopes on the Xie family, but they backed out of the marriage agreement. The arrival of Pei Shuji rekindled his hope. Manchu, it's not that your grandfather doesn't believe in you, it's that a wise man rides the wind to reach the clouds. Clever people know how to leverage advantages. And the Pei family will be our greatest asset. Of course I understand. Marriages between noble families have always been a means to consolidate power and status. I just find his eagerness a bit hard to accept. That eagerness to give me away like a gift to achieve his own ends. For my childhood friend Lin Cece threw a birthday party at a private club. When I walked into the private room, I immediately spotted Xie Yanci and Yi Qingshuang sitting on the sofa. He looked up at me. A storm of emotions swirling in his eyes, tinged with what seemed like pain. I calmly averted my gaze and took a seat at the other end of the sofa. Lin Cece quickly scooted over and whispered to me in complaint. I didn't invite him, he showed up on his own, and as if that wasn't bad enough, he brought her along. I'm so annoyed I could scream. I didn't want to dwell on the subject. I took out the birthday gift I'd prepared earlier and said, "Happy birthday." She opened the box, her face lighting up with surprise. Man, I absolutely adore you." Inside the box was a limited edition ladies' watch. It took me quite a bit of effort and going through a lot of trouble to get this. Lin Cece hugged me and whined, "Wah, President Li, marry me, I'm willing to be your mistress." Everyone started teasing, "Wake up, you don't stand a chance compared to President Pei. If I were Man, I'd take them both, Cece on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, President Pei on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays." Just as everyone was laughing and joking around, Yi Qingshuang abruptly stood up. Her sudden interruption brought the merriment to a halt. Everyone exchanged bewildered glances as she said to Xie Yanci with a stern face, "Yanci, come outside for a moment." Xie Yanci rose in silence and followed her out. The two of them started arguing right there in the hallway, their voices so loud they could be heard from inside the private room. Eavesdropping on their argument was mortifying for everyone. Yi Qingshuang's voice was on the verge of breaking. "Your eyes haven't left Li Manchu since the moment she walked in. What are you trying to do? What the hell are you trying to do?" Xie Yanci's tone was icy. "Will you stop making a scene? I'm making a scene." Yi Qingshuang let out a bitter, broken laugh. "Let me show you what making a real scene looks like." The private room door was flung open. Yi Qingshuang burst into the room like a cannonball. Just like 3 years ago when she dashed into the rain to stop my car, she charged recklessly up to me, pointed at Xie Yanci, and said, "Li Manchu, I don't want this man anymore, I'm giving him to you." Xie Yanci stormed in after her, grabbing her wrist to pull her away. "Will you stop this madness? You might have no shame, but the Xie family still has its reputation. Whatever this is, we'll discuss it at home." Yi Qingshuang violently shook him off, her voice a hysterical shriek. "Discuss what at home? That you've finally realized the one you love is Li Manchu, how you've been secretly pining for her, how you get drunk every night calling out her name. I have no shame. Xie Yanci, don't you forget who was the one begging and pleading to chase after me in the first place. I told you long ago, I'm not some caged songbird for you aristocrats to toy with and humiliate at your whim." A vein throbbed on Xie Yanci's forehead. He'd reached his limit and roared, "Yes, it was me who pursued you, but Yi Qingshuang, don't you dare push me to regret it." Yi Qingshuang froze. The entire private room fell silent in an instant. Yi Qingshuang let out a wild, hysterical laugh, tears streaming down her face as she laughed. "See, you've finally admitted it." Every single word was a cry of anguish. Xie Yanci slumped onto the sofa, his face a picture of utter dejection. "I'd had enough of this farce." I stood up to leave. "Cece, I'm heading out." Yi Qingshuang darted in front of me, blocking my path. Tears welled in her eyes as she glared at me with pure hatred. "Li Manchu, you think you can just run away after seducing someone else's husband, you home-wrecking bitch." With a cold expression, I picked up the bottle of red wine from the bar and poured the entire contents over her head. "Who the hell do you think you are? How dare you throw a tantrum in front of me? You clawed your way up by seducing men, and you think everyone is as shameless as you." Yi Qingshuang, drenched in red wine and utterly disheveled, covered her head and shrieked, "How dare you pour wine on me?" I sneered, "How dare I? I dare because I am Li Manchu. I dare because I am the heir to the Li family, a century-old dynasty. And you, what gives you the right? Your utter worthlessness. Your talent for throwing hysterical fits, the fact that you're nothing but a pathetic clown. A woman who marries into an old money family is never just a pretty vase. A lady has her own battlefield, on their own turf. They help their husbands and families maintain social connections, skillfully navigating every situation. Yet that good-for-nothing Yi Qingshuang can't even manage to be a decent trophy wife. A word of advice: don't break the high branch you've worked so hard to climb. And another thing, know your place. You're messing with the wrong person. Yi Qingshuang, having been hit where it hurt, flushed crimson and snapped furiously. Who's trying to climb the social ladder? What's so great about having money? You rich people are absolutely disgusting. With that one sentence, she had insulted everyone present. With things having escalated to this point, everyone looked rather displeased. ACI, can't you even keep your wife in check? Now she's launching area of effect attacks. Xie Yanci was utterly humiliated by her. He had no choice but to apologize to everyone before forcibly dragging Yi Qingshuang away. What started as a perfectly good gathering ended in a sour and unpleasant breakup. 5. Sensing my foul mood, Lin Cece pestered and pleaded until she finally dragged me off to a bar for a second round. With practiced ease, she selected a few male models and had them line up. Each was tall, well-built, and strikingly handsome. Lin Cece looked at me with a grin. It's your first time in a place like this, isn't it, man? Don't worry, these boys are very well behaved. They won't get out of line. She glanced at one of the models who resembled a popular young actor and beckoned to him. Go pour manager Lee a drink. The young man walked over to me and obediently knelt by my feet to pour the wine. I frowned slightly and said flatly, stand up to pour it. Lin Cece took a sip of her wine and said to me in a hushed, mysterious tone, I heard a funny story the other day. It's about Yi Qingshuang. She truly is a peculiar woman. Just as Xie Yanci once remarked, she has an unyielding spirit. The irony is, after finally marrying into a wealthy family and transforming her status, she went out of her way to distance herself from the Xie family at every turn. Unwilling to be a refined lady of leisure at home, she wanted to work and be self-sufficient. The Xie family pulled strings to get her a university position. But she flatly refused, insisting on passing the civil service exam on her own merit. After studying at home for a year and putting in all that effort, she still failed the exam. In the end, she could only work as a Chinese language teacher at a small tutoring center, earning a meager 5,000 yuan a month. Not only that, she also kept her own family at arm's length, vigilantly preventing them from taking the slightest advantage of the Xie family. Her parents were decent, unassuming people who would meekly go along with whatever their daughter said. But not long ago, Yi Qingshuang's brother got himself into some trouble. While standing up for his girlfriend, he accidentally beat someone so badly they were seriously injured. The victim's family demanded 2 million, or they'd send him to prison. Her family was dirt poor. Where could they possibly get 2 million? But the Xie family could afford it, so her parents went to her office, knelt before her, and begged through tears for her to save her brother. Guess what happened? Yi Qingshuang produced a bank card containing her entire life savings of 30,000 yuan. Her parents were utterly distraught, unable to comprehend their daughter's cold-heartedness. Are you just going to stand by and watch your brother go to prison? They pleaded, if he ends up behind bars, his life will be ruined. Frankly, neither this matter nor 2 million is of any consequence to the Xie family. If Yi Qingshuang had just asked, the Xie family could have resolved it in an instant. Yet she refused. She had her own principles. I married Xie Yanci for the man he is, not for his influence or his wealth. I don't want the Xie family to look down on me, and I don't want people whispering behind my back, calling me a gold-digging, burdensome troublemaker. I don't want to give anyone a reason to gossip. All you see is my glamorous facade. You have no idea how difficult my life in the Xie family truly is. My brother is your biological son, but am I not your biological daughter? To be honest, the Xie family treated her quite well. She's just overly sensitive, awkward, and lacks the poise for high society. This whole affair has caused quite a stir. When the Xie family found out, they were mortified and offered to pay the money for her. But Yi Qingshuang flatly refused, with their good intentions thrown back in their faces. The Xie family simply washed their hands of the whole affair. It all ended with her brother going to prison and her parents disowning her. Lin Cece concluded by saying, is Yi Qingshuang out of her mind? She actually claims she married Xie Yanci for love, not for his money. To prove a point, she's turned a perfectly good life of luxury into a miserable slog. I thought she must have had some serious skills to have Xie Yanci wrapped around her finger like that back then. But this is all she's got, I chuckled. She hasn't changed a bit. People like Yi Qingxuang appear unique on the surface, like a lotus flower rising unstained from the mud. You crack open the shell, only to find the core is hollow, there's nothing inside. All that's left is a baffling, stubborn pride. 6. We drank late into the night, and in the end, the Lin family's private driver took me home. I fumbled my way through unlocking the front door. I kicked off my high heels and let my coat fall to the floor. I shuffled slowly into the house. The living room light flicked on with a sharp click. The light was glaring, almost painfully bright. I squinted as I looked over. Pei Shuji stood in the living room, his gaze cool and assessing. Have you been drinking? I ignored him, sat down on the sofa, and felt a slight headache coming on. Closing my eyes, I massaged my temples. A pair of warm, slender hands approached and began to gently massage them for me. Pei Shuji said quietly, "You should drink less. Your stomach has always been weak, and you're prone to migraines." Annoyed, I frowned and asked, "Did Grandpa tell you that, too?" The massaging hands came to a stop. I opened my eyes and looked quietly at Pei Shuji. He looked somewhat aggrieved. Man, do you hate me?" I lifted his chin and smiled nonchalantly. "Little brother, why indulge in wishful thinking? It's just a marriage of convenience. What's there to hate or like?" Pei Shuji looked on the verge of tears. He bit his lip, his eyes rimmed red, a stubborn look on his face. "But I love you." I found it somewhat absurd and ridiculous. I looked him up and down. Status can change with time and circumstance, but interests do not. Only shared interests form the most solid bond to sustain a relationship. Pei Shuji, I don't need love. As long as our interests remain aligned, I can grow old with you. He was silent for a long moment before asking abruptly, out of the blue, "Do you still have feelings for Xie Yanci?" I was utterly disgusted and shook my head immediately. "No, I only love myself. A true female lead loves only herself. It's the minor characters who get tangled up in matters of the heart." 7. Pei Shuji was inexplicably cheerful again. He said that, just like the person I like, he aligns with the principle of shared interests, so we are sure to grow old together. I was at a loss for words. Truthfully, I don't understand where Pei Shuji's affection for me comes from, but when I ask him, he remains silent. I wasn't that interested in finding out anyway, so I couldn't be bothered to ask again. A few days later, I ran into Xie Yanci again at a business dinner. What rotten luck. I turned and walked away. He quickly chased after me. Man. I stopped and greeted him with a thin, insincere smile. "Mr. Xie." A pained look crossed his face. "Do you have to be so distant with me? We grew up together. For heaven's sake, about what happened last time." "I'm sorry." I cut him off. "Stop. If you have nothing else, Mr. Xie, I'll be on my way." With that, I turned and walked away. Xie Yanci grabbed my hand, his eyes rimmed red, and said with obsessive desperation, "What if everything she said is true? What if I've finally realized the one I love most is you? Can't you give me one more chance to choose you?" How utterly disgusting and nauseating. I shook him off with an expressionless face. "I don't care who you like, Li Manchu never takes out the trash. Back when you were so insistent on breaking off our engagement, dead set on marrying Yi Qingxuang, even though we were on opposite sides, I actually had a certain admiration for that pure, unadulterated foolishness of yours. Looking at it now, you don't even rise to the level of pure foolishness. You're just a shameless, worthless scumbag." Xie Yanci's face turned deathly pale as he watched me leave, utterly devastated. Little did I know, someone with an agenda had captured the whole scene on camera, and it rocketed straight to the top of the trending headlines. Even though the secretary acted swiftly and the trending topic was taken down in no time. The fervor of online discussion showed no signs of cooling down. Rumors swirled that Xie Yanci's marriage was on the rocks, shattering the Cinderella fantasy of marrying into wealth. Other gossip painted me as a homewrecker, questioning how I could be so shameless as to still pine for a married ex while being engaged to someone as accomplished as Pei Shuji. Yi Qingxuang certainly wasn't going to let such a golden opportunity slip through her fingers. She took to Weibo overnight, posting a few vague insinuations that seemed to confirm I was the other woman. Lin Cece, too furious to let it slide, publicly clashed with her right there on Weibo. "Getting tangled up with you two pieces of human garbage is the worst. A scheming homewrecker and a cheating scumbag who plays the innocent victim, a perfect match made in hell. You toxic freaks deserve each other." stay together and rot. Then, someone dug up the incidents where Xie Yanxi drank until he had a stomach hemorrhage at my engagement party, and Yi Qingshuang caused a huge scene at my company. Public opinion gradually began to split into two camps. One camp believed that what goes around comes around, and that Yi Qingshuang had brought this upon herself. This is just what happens when you're not from the same social class. The other camp felt sorry for Yi Qingshuang, believing she was just a plaything for the rich kid. The internet was in an uproar again. 8. When my grandfather summoned me back to the old house to demand an explanation, I happened to be with Pei Shuji. He insisted on coming back with me. When we entered grandfather's study, Li Yuran was already there. Of course, he wouldn't miss this chance to mock me. Well, look who finally decided to grace us with her presence. Keeping the old man waiting for so long, quite the grand entrance, I replied coolly. I'm only this busy because the company is saddled with a useless burden like you. For a man as shrewd as grandfather to have produced such an idiot is truly baffling. Li Yuran flew into a rage and raised his hand to strike me. You ill-bred little bee. Pei Shuji stepped in front of me, pushing his hand away. Mr. Li, you'd better know your place before you try anything next time. Li Manchu is not only the heir to your Li family, but also my fiancé. Neither of those identities is someone you can lay a finger on. Understood? Li Yuran, having been thoroughly humiliated, turned pale and then flushed with anger, looking utterly mortified. In the end, he could only retort with a sneer. How magnanimous of you, Mr. Pei. Manchu's scandal is all over the trending searches. She really takes after her father, doesn't she? But you see, such behavior is called romantic for a man, but shameless for a woman. I slapped him hard across the face. Are you awake now? If not, I'd be happy to give you another one. Li Yuran's face contorted with rage, yet he dared not strike back, reduced to impotent fury. Was I wrong, you fickle, shameless harlot? My expression remained blank as I backhanded him twice more. Go on, keep insulting me. Let's see if your mouth is tougher than my palm. Fuming with anger, he panted heavily with a huff, 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 and shot a glance toward the old master seated at the head of the room. The old master sat perfectly composed, sipping his tea slowly, watching our standoff with an inscrutable expression. I smiled. Done cursing me out. The gossip blogs are spreading lies, and instead of having my back, you couldn't wait to throw mud at me. What? Were you afraid I wouldn't figure out you're the one pulling the strings behind this? Ever since I got engaged to Pei Shuji, he was completely out of the running for the heir position. He just couldn't stand to see me happy. Targeting me at every turn, Li Yuran panicked, his face pale as he denied it. I don't understand a word you're saying. Don't make baseless accusations, I said unhurriedly. If you don't understand, so be it. But today, I must teach you a principle. Harmony in the family is the foundation for all success. We are both members of the Li family. Our fates are intertwined, we rise and fall together. Don't let your clever schemes backfire. The old master finally spoke up. Manchu is right. Yuran, you should apologize to her. Li Yuran clenched his fists, gritted his teeth to suppress his anger, and forced the words out one by one. I'm sorry, I smiled magnanimously. It's quite all right. To err is human. Perhaps you should read a bit more, uncle, so you won't make such a mistake again. Those words hit him right where it hurt. Before he was recognized and brought back to the Li family at age 17, he was just a street punk. He didn't even finish the 9 years of compulsory education. Even though the Li family later sent him for further studies, the foundation was already rotten. No amount of effort could change that. That's why he hated nothing more than people calling him ignorant or telling him to read more. Li Yuran couldn't take it anymore and stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Pei Shuji held my hand firmly, looked up at grandfather with a cool and dignified expression, and said, Grandfather Li, please don't take those baseless rumors from outside seriously. Man and I are doing very well. The old master stood up and said, Shuji, please stay for dinner. 9. Several years ago, my strategic investments in the smart manufacturing sector paid off tremendously. The Li Group's financial report was stunning. Revenue soared by 20%, and net profit skyrocketed by 72%. It was a glorious moment. 1 month later, grandfather convened a board meeting. At the meeting, it was officially announced that I would take over the Li Group, becoming the new head of the family. While Li Yuran was fuming, all the other shareholders were delighted with the outcome. Prior to this, I had been managing the Lee Group on my grandfather's behalf for over 3 years, and my capabilities and achievements were there for all to see. The Lee family is a century-old dynasty, and I am its first female CEO in history. On the day I took office, Lee Group's stock hit the upper limit right at market open. At my grandfather's behest, the company hosted a celebratory banquet, inviting the heads of various families along with some journalists. Xie Yanci and Yi Qingshuang arrived as well. Following closely behind the head of the Xie family and his wife, Uncle Xie, clearly intent on mending ties with our family, stayed by my grandfather's side. Chatting and laughing amiably as if all the past discord and grievances between our families had never existed, Auntie Xie then took my hand and said, "Manchu, you truly are the girl I watched grow up. You've turned out so accomplished, 100 times better than my own two good-for-nothings." The Xie family has only one son, Xie Yanci. This was a thinly veiled barb, and it was painfully obvious who the real target was. "Mrs. Xie wasn't finished venting. It's my Yanci who's blind," she fumed. He passed up a real treasure in favor of a worthless imitation. Yi Qingshuang's expression indeed darkened. She stood there silently, her jaw clenched so tight it seemed her teeth might shatter. I offered a reserved smile and remained silent until Pei Shuji came over to lead me away. Then came the interview segment. Yi Qingshuang had somehow procured a press pass and launched into a sharp, mocking critique. "Miss Lee, netizens say you're not a true strong female lead. They claim you've only gotten this far because you were born with a silver spoon in your mouth." The Xie family members' faces darkened with palpable disappointment. I replied with a light, unconcerned tone, "Good fortune is part of one's capability. I've never denied I was born into privilege. But in the Lee family's century-long history, I am the only female head. Do you really think that could be achieved by birthright alone?" Stung by the rebuttal and unwilling to back down, Yi Qingshuang began lashing out recklessly. "There are also netizens who say that 3 years ago, you used the cancellation of your engagement as leverage to take a billion-yuan project from the Xie family. And now, 3 years later, you're marrying into the Pei family to consolidate your power. They claim your achievements today are entirely built on stepping over 2 fiancés. What's your take on that?" I laughed. "What's my take? I think you're both ridiculous and foolish." "Is that what the netizens are saying? Or is that what you're saying, Mrs. Xie? But I can answer that for you. If men can climb the ladder by stepping on women, then why can't women climb by stepping on men?" This shocking statement instantly sparked a wave of discussion throughout the room. It's really quite strange. Throughout history, countless men have risen to fame and fortune by relying on their wives, fathers-in-law, parents, or even friends. They can ascend by stepping on those around them with impunity, often receiving praise for it. These men become the privileged few who hold the power of discourse. They impose a set of harsh and exacting standards on women to condition them. To be deemed worthy of the title independent woman, one must be flawless. She cannot rely on others, especially not on men, otherwise, she will be tried in the court of public opinion. And why on earth should I listen to a man's rules? Why can't I be the one who makes the rules? Pei Shuji took the microphone. "My wife is exceptionally brilliant and has always relied on her own abilities. I dare not take any credit." He then shifted his tone. "But let me also tell you this, if she ever needs it, and if I have it to give, I will spare nothing." I paused for a moment, turning my head to look at him. He was looking back at me, and then gave a soft smile. 10. This interview video spread rapidly across the entire internet. It's trending across all platforms. Lee Manchu admits to climbing the ladder by stepping on men. A real or fake strong female lead. Beware the independent woman trap. The Qing dynasty is long gone. It's time for us women to set the rules. Is there really no one shipping our Ji Shu Da Li CP? The online discussion has reached a fever pitch, with some supporting me and others criticizing me, but the majority are completely obsessed with shipping the couple. The clip of me and Pei Shuji locking eyes was edited by fans into all sorts of shipping videos, which went viral on Bilibili. Meanwhile, it was also dug up that Yi Qingshuang, in order to avoid burdening the Xie family, ended up sending her own brother to prison. After digesting all the drama, netizens were utterly astounded. They said she completely fumbled a winning hand. After marrying into a wealthy family, she achieved nothing. She didn't leverage their connections to better herself, didn't secure any money, cut ties with her own family, and ended up with absolutely nothing. What a hopeless romantic she is. Even Wang Baochuan would have to take a back seat compared to her. My biological mother, whom I haven't seen in years, suddenly said she wants to meet me and Pei Shuji. She was practicing spiritual cultivation at a mountain temple when she met Pei Shuji. She studied him for a long moment before smiling and saying, "So you're Man's fiancé?" Pei Shuji replied respectfully, "Yes, auntie." She nodded gently. "I saw the video of you protecting Man. Knowing she has you to look after her puts my mind at ease." Then she looked at me again, and tears suddenly welled up in her eyes. Man, it's all my fault. I'm so sorry." My heart was as still as a frozen lake. In those first few years, I hated her. My father died in disgrace. I was trapped in the Li household, every step a struggle, ostracized at every turn. Yet she turned a blind eye and abandoned me to my fate. Sometimes I even wonder, if I were to die just like that, would she shed a single tear for me? But in the last couple of years, I've stopped hating. Because I have no expectations of her left. Affection that comes too late is worth less than dirt. The same goes for a mother's love that comes too late. I offered a polite smile. "There's no need for that, madam. Life is a journey, and I am but a traveler. Our connection was severed years ago." She understood, and her expression dimmed. On the way down the mountain, I gazed listlessly out the window without saying a word. Pei Shuji drove me to the mountaintop, looking at the sea of city lights below. His expression was earnest and his tone gentle. "It's all right, sis, if you're tired, just come rest in my arms. You have the right to take a break too." I threw myself into his arms and sobbed my heart out. All the grievances I'd endured while struggling on my own were finally released. The path up the mountain was rugged and treacherous, but thankfully, I've made it up here. 11. The next time I heard the names Xie Yanci and Yi Qingshuang, it was news of their divorce. Their lavish, storybook wedding was like a Cinderella dream, and now, the dream is over. After his failed marriage, Xie Yanci seemed to have matured somewhat and began learning to take over the Xie family business. However, lacking a knack for commerce, he made several critical missteps. The Xie family's fortunes have since declined significantly. In his desperate bid to secure the Li family's business, he humbled himself to ask me out several times, but I turned him down every time. Yi Qingshuang was fired from the training school. The divorce left deep psychological scars. She stopped taking her classes seriously and would mutter to herself every day, "Our love was so pure, untainted by the stench of money or power. How did we end up like this?" Why, to this day, she still doesn't understand what went wrong. Her fatal flaw was her self-righteous pride and hollow sense of superiority. Yet, it was this very trait that drew Xie Yanci to her. One could only say, her pride was both her making and her undoing. Later, Yi Qingshuang vanished from the city without a trace. 12. My wedding night with Pei Shuji. At the crucial moment, I stopped and pressed him. Demanding to know what he really wanted from me, he looked up at me, his eyes full of hurt and grievance. His eyes were dark and bright, with long, thick lashes misted with tears. The corners of his eyes were flushed a delicate red, making him look both pitiful and utterly captivating. "Sis, you're so cruel," he whimpered. "Do you want me dead?" I scoffed. "Are you going to talk or not?" He started talking through his sobs. "The first time he saw me was at my father's funeral. Back then, I didn't shed a single tear, and people criticized me for it. I couldn't be bothered with their gossip, so I hid in the courtyard." He ran over to comfort me, saying, "It's okay, sis, they just don't get it. When someone is utterly heartbroken, they can't cry at all. I remember now, that really did happen. It's just that, at the time, I thought he was being a bit odd. It's not that I can't cry, I genuinely don't feel sad." When the news of my engagement to Xie Yanci reached him, he desperately wanted to stop it, but back then, he had just turned 17 and was still a minor. A year later, when Xie Yanci broke off our engagement for Yi Qingshuang, he was eager to come and confess his feelings to me. However, his father passed away unexpectedly, forcing him to hastily take over the family business. Back then, the Pei family was in dire straits, and he was afraid of dragging me down. It wasn't until 3 years later, after he had steered the Pei family to prosperity, that he finally felt he could come to me and propose a marriage alliance. His feelings for me were a classic case of love at first sight, a young man's instant infatuation with a girl, and that's the end of the story. It makes perfect sense. yet it still manages to surprise. Pei Shuji looked at me with glistening eyes. I love you, sis. My response to him was a tender, lingering kiss. The temperature in the room began to climb once more. Alright, I'll believe it this once. I want both a career and a man. Story 2. I kept the poor school heartthrob, but he didn't like me, and he would charge me extra if we kissed too often. Later, my family went bankrupt. I tentatively probed him carefully, saying, Xie, the extra money you charged for our kisses is enough for me to keep another male model. Can you give me a discount? The corners of his lips curved into a mocking arc as he refused me. Then, he kissed me for a long time and took all my money. I finally gave up. It turned out that he really only liked my money. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day. Now the story begins. During the club dinner party, the game of truth or dare heated up the whole atmosphere. Only I was absent-minded. Even though Xie Yuqin was sitting opposite me, my mind was filled with the earnest words my father had said to me this morning. Lily, there's a high probability that our family will go bankrupt. Bankruptcy. Hey, Dao Li. What are you doing? It's your turn. Do you choose truth or dare? When I came back to my senses, I realized that everyone's eyes were on me. I slowly let out an O and said, then I choose truth. The questioner cleared his throat. Dao Li, may I ask, are you in a relationship now? Suddenly, Xie Yuqin opposite me knocked the cup in his hand on the table, neither too hard nor too soft. I looked up at the sound and met his deep gaze. I understood what he meant. He was warning me not to mention him. Of course I wouldn't. After all, we were just in a sugar baby relationship. I shook my head seriously and said, no, I'm not. After answering, I even gave Xie Yuqin a look that said, don't worry, but he stopped looking at me. The upper half of his face was hidden in the dim light, and I could only see him lightly twitch his lips. I wasn't pressed with more questions, and soon it was someone else's turn. I sank back into the anxiety of my impending downfall. The most disappointing thing was that I was probably about to be unable to afford to keep Xie Yuqin. I sighed and gulped down another glass of fruit beer. I don't know how long it had passed. When it was my turn again, I was already so drunk that I was dizzy. Dao Li, do you choose truth or dare this time? Alcohol emboldened me. I knocked my cup on the table and said, dare. Okay, let me see. Please randomly choose an opposite-sex person on the spot and kiss any part of his body. This was a godsend opportunity. Kissing Xie Yuqin in such an occasion. He surely wouldn't have the nerve to ask me for money. I blinked slowly, then propped myself up on the table and stood up, staggering over to Xie Yuqin. Our eyes met. And I informed him without room for refusal, I'm going to kiss you. The private room fell into an eerie silence. The next second, it erupted into deafening laughter. Come on, is Dao the junior student too drunk or crazy? Does she really have no self-awareness at all? The last person who used the dare as an excuse to forcefully hug Brother Qin was thrown far away by Brother Qin. I was just drunk, not stupid. I turned around and retorted to them righteously, he will let me kiss him. It was clearly Xie Yuqin who took the initiative to let me keep him in the first place. He was not only a softie but also spent a lot of money, so he would always press me down and kiss me when we had the slightest disagreement. As his sugar mommy, I couldn't seem too stingy. I could only pretend to be nonchalant and give him most of my pocket money. After I finished speaking, they laughed even louder. Okay, let her kiss, don't stop her. I'm really looking forward to seeing how far she'll be thrown by Brother Qin. I was so angry that my ears seemed to be smoking. Even when I spoke to Xie Yuqin, there was a hint of venting my anger in my tone. Bring your legs closer together. Otherwise, how can I sit? Haha. I'm dying of laughter. She even wants to sit on Brother Qin's lap. Xie Yuqin had been lazily curling his lips throughout, and he wordlessly adjusted his sitting posture. I climbed onto his lap and sat sideways, satisfied. I kissed his side face. Under normal circumstances, I would have to pay him 88 yuan for this. Now I could get away with not paying. The private room fell silent in an instant, and everyone's jaws dropped to the ground. When Xie Yuqin looked down at me, his chin rubbed against my face. Are you satisfied? I pushed my luck and asked, if I'm not satisfied, can I kiss you again? After all, there weren't many opportunities like this to get something for free. Xie Yuqin stared at me, and his Adam's apple rolled. No, then, I was thrown back to the ground by him. There was a hubbub around. and it seemed that they were saying something like Xiaoyu Qin was too decent to make a girl lose face, and I had taken advantage of him. I picked up my glass and solemnly toasted that person, expressing my agreement. Saving 88 yuan was really taking advantage. As the alcohol took effect, I was extremely sleepy. As soon as the dinner party ended, I went straight back to the apartment I rented off campus. I threw myself onto the sofa and closed my eyes. Not long after I fell asleep, Xiaoyu Qin also came back. One warm kiss after another landed on my face, nose, and forehead. I frowned and pushed him away. I want to sleep. Didn't you say you weren't satisfied with the kiss? I ignored him and buried my face in the crevice of the sofa to continue sleeping. Xiaoyu Qin was also amused by my reaction. He directly picked me up, pressed me to straddle his lap, and slowly taunted me. Can you not be so selfish, junior student? Which professor taught you to play hard to get and then pretend to be dead after flirting? I was forcefully woken up and was extremely annoyed. I leaned against his neck and rubbed it, whispering softly, "But I don't really want to." Xiaoyu Qin misunderstood what I meant. He tilted his head and gently touched my ear. "Okay, I don't really want to do anything, don't be afraid." I hadn't thought in that direction at all. Just a kiss was so expensive. If it were something else, with my current situation of going bankrupt, I simply couldn't afford his escort fee. I propped myself up on his shoulders and sat up, explaining to him with sleepy eyes, "No, I mean I don't want to kiss." Xiaoyu Qin sized me up for a moment. "What's wrong?" The cool light of the pale tone refracted on his eyebrows and eyes, when he stared at someone intently. It really gave people the illusion of deep affection. I was distracted by this illusion, and a glimmer of hope welled up in my heart. Because it's too expensive, I tentatively probed him carefully again. "Xiaoyu Qin, the extra money you charged for our kisses is enough for me to keep another male model. Can you give me a discount?" Xiaoyu Qin stared at me without speaking. I somehow felt a chill down my spine. After a long while, he finally nodded in understanding. "You think I'm too expensive?" Xiaoyu Qin's fingertips carelessly twirled around my hair. "Do you know that if we change to another relationship, you won't have to spend a single penny?" My eyes instantly lit up. A romantic relationship, a couple relationship. His gaze locked onto my face, and he didn't answer. After several more seconds, he said indifferently, "It's a stranger relationship." "Well, do you want to consider ending our relationship?" It was like a bolt from the blue that wilted me. I was reluctant to part with Xiaoyu Qin and tried to bargain with him desperately. "I don't want to end it. Is it really not possible to lower the price a little bit?" The coldness in Xiaoyu Qin's eyes became more and more obvious. He was too lazy to waste words with me and directly forced a deal on me. He pressed me into his arms and kissed me for a long time. While taking a breath, he bit my lower lip, and the force was a bit harsh. "What on earth do you take me for? Do you really think I'm that cheap?" Xiaoyu Qin seemed a bit too extreme. Maybe I had expressed myself a bit wrongly, and he misunderstood that I was saying he wasn't worth the price. But there was no need for him to call himself names, right? Xiaoyu Qin rarely showed me a cold face. This was the second time. The last time was during the period when my father reduced my living expenses. Xiaoyu Qin and I went to a KTV to celebrate the birthday of my best friend Songyun, who was also the only person in the whole school who knew about the relationship between Xiaoyu Qin and me. She hired 6 male models to celebrate her birthday. I was curled up on the sofa, playing with Xiaoyu Qin's hands. Seeing this, Songyun laughed out loud. "Hey, you two seem to be in a relationship, is that so?" Xiaoyu Qin smiled with his eyelids drooping, then his fingers curled, and he wrapped my hand in his palm. I looked up in confusion, then I heard Xiaoyu Qin call my name. "Then do you want to be in a relationship?" I was a bit stunned. Was I going to change from an authoritative sugar mommy to a girlfriend? Songyun reached out and poked me. "Hurry up and agree. Agree quickly. If you agree, you won't have to spend so much money on him anymore." Money. This triggered a sensitive word. I immediately turned to look at Songyun. She said contentedly, "The money you save would be enough for you to keep several more male models at the same time, right?" Songyun paid 23,000 yuan a month to keep a male model. I was immersed in my own world and began to calculate the accounts attentively. I didn't even notice that the two of them were arguing. Xiaoyu Qin sneered, "Ms. Song's view of love allows for keeping other people while being in a relationship. What's wrong with that? I make it clear in advance, if they don't like it, they don't have to be in a relationship with me." And this kind of situation is quite common, isn't it? Songyun took my arm and said, right, Dao Dao. I casually perfunctorily replied, Xie didn't say anything more. I finally figured out that I had been giving Xie so much money every month. If we were in a relationship, I could save a large sum of money. I hurriedly pulled at Xie sleeve and nodded enthusiastically. Okay, let's be in a relationship. Xie, but for some reason, he suddenly changed his mind. I was just saying it casually. Xie leaned over to pick up the cup on the coffee table and, taking the opportunity, pulled his sleeve back from my hand. My mood was like riding a roller coaster, and it instantly dropped. Songyun couldn't stand it and snorted, Dao Dao, do we have to endure this kind of treatment even though we're spending money? Dump him, and I'll introduce you to other handsome guys. Xie sneered disdainfully, lowered his eyes, and looked at the cup in his hand without saying a word. I feebly changed the subject, acting as if nothing had happened. There was no way. Xie was just too much in line with my aesthetic taste. I really couldn't bear to part with him. But it seemed that I had no choice but to part with him this time. Xie took almost all of my pocket money for this month. I could no longer afford to keep this canary. The next morning, while he was still sound asleep, I sent him a message to terminate our relationship, blocked him, and then went back to school. Sorry, Senior Xie, after thinking about it all night, I've decided to terminate our relationship. I wish you to find a more generous sugar mommy. Suddenly becoming single again, coupled with the bankruptcy crisis, my depression seemed to have increased exponentially. During a boring class, I had already sighed 5 times. Dao Dao, why are you unhappy? Shu Che, who was sitting next to me, asked me in a low voice. There was no need to hide the bankruptcy from my childhood sweetheart who had grown up with me. I lay on the table and told him my thoughts. I think I definitely need to find a part-time job to earn my living expenses. Shu Che pondered for a moment and then said, actually, I haven't heard my parents say that Uncle Dao's company is in crisis, but since you want to earn money, would you like to apply to be my piano teacher? I shook my head with a good sense of self-awareness. I've only won a few awards that don't have much value. I don't have much skill, but it's more than enough to teach me. Dao Dao, 6 classes a month, 50,000 yuan. Is that okay? I was swayed. Shu Che gently persuaded me. Don't think too much. I just didn't like my previous piano teacher. I immediately became his hard worker. Boss, I will definitely teach you seriously. After class, Shu Che and I left the teaching building together. I was still making an appointment with him for the teaching time of the first class. Then I saw Xie standing at the entrance of the teaching building. He was looking at me, and there was an indescribable chill in his gaze. I found an excuse to persuade Shu Che to leave. Then I walked up to Xie worriedly. Are you looking for me? I was a bit worried that he had come to ask me for a breakup fee. Xie looked at me coldly. After a moment, he finally spoke. What do you mean? Did you dump me because male models are cheaper? Under Xie oppressive questioning, I had to tell him the truth about the bankruptcy. Now, I can no longer afford to keep you. Xie was stunned. Just because of this. Has nothing to do with male models. There was a big question mark on my head. Why do you keep bringing up male models? He smiled faintly. Neither a smile nor a laugh. Didn't you mention it yesterday? I recalled it for a moment and then realized that he had misunderstood. I felt that my aesthetic taste had been insulted. How could I possibly dump him for a male model whose face I couldn't even remember? I was so angry that my voice involuntarily rose. I have no intention of keeping anyone else. I only mentioned male models to emphasize that Xie was expensive. Hearing this, he let out a self-deprecating chuckle. His tense shoulders finally relaxed. When I saw Xie raise his hand as if to hold me, I dodged it immediately. I kindly reminded him, Xie, we've terminated our relationship. He casually let out an "oh" and said, I know, then let's be in a relationship. He didn't understand the key point at all. I really don't have any money to spend on you. I stood on tiptoe and leaned close to his ear, emphasizing it to him. He took the opportunity to put his arm around my waist, lifted me up 2 steps, so that I could look him in the eye. I have money to spend on you. After casually dealing with me, he took out his phone and opened the Moments app to edit a public post. Actually, I could understand his current mood. He felt a sense of crisis after suddenly losing his sugar mommy, so he was willing to please me a bit. Essentially, He still didn't believe that I was really poor. I stopped his hand that was typing and sincerely advised him, "I'm not lying to you, Xieyuqin, I'm really poor now. No matter what you do, even if you say you like me and that you're with me not for the money, I can't give you even a single yuan." The corners of Xieyuqin's lips curled into a cold smile. "What the hell are you talking about?" Since he was too embarrassed to admit it, I no longer insisted on exposing him. I just comforted him casually, saying, "With your looks, you're very popular. I'll also recommend you to other wealthy young ladies. If someone chooses you, I'll give her your phone number." Then, before he could react, I slipped away from beside him. Bye-bye. I ran very fast, and the 2 ballerina buns under my ears were left flapping behind me. In the afternoon of that day, after class, Shu Che and I went to the school's piano room for the first teaching session. Unfortunately, we ran into Xieyuqin again. Shu Che blocked me behind him and his gaze landed lightly on the boy opposite. "Dao Dao, is he harassing you?" Xieyuqin smiled and said, "This has nothing to do with you." Shu Che faced him directly and said, "What concerns Dao Dao concerns me. If you have something to say, you can tell me, and I'll deal with it on her behalf." Xieyuqin leaned against the wall obliquely and sized him up with great interest. "She had a free ride with me and doesn't plan to take responsibility. Are you going to take her place and let me have a free ride in return?" Shu Che's face turned livid with anger. I came out from behind him and was about to pull Xieyuqin away when I saw a girl running over from not far away. "Senior Xie, so you're here. Didn't we agree to have dinner together tonight?" I was stunned for a second, then I grabbed Shu Che and ran all the way to the piano room without looking back. Vaguely, I heard Xieyuqin calling my name from behind. I couldn't hide my relationship with Xieyuqin from Shu Che anymore. His fingertips stroked the piano, and he said casually, "I've seen a lot of these Phoenix men. He's pestering you now just because he wants to squeeze out your last bit of value." I rested my chin in my hand and stared out the window, lost in thought. Without saying a word, Shu Che said casually, "Dao Dao, didn't you want to introduce rich and beautiful girls to him? I have a friend who likes his type. How about I introduce them to each other?" I thought of the girl just now and said softly, "Maybe it's not necessary." Shu Che noticed my low spirits and said angrily, "Dao Dao, is someone so mercenary really worthy of your affection?" I turned around to look at Shu Che and said, "Actually, I fell in love with him a long time ago. I fell in love with Xieyuqin at first sight, but I never found an opportunity to get close to him, until one night. I saw him surrounded by a group of burly men in suits near the school. I took a deep breath, pulled up my suspender skirt, and rushed over to stand in front of Xieyuqin. "I've already called the police. Do you still want to start a fight?" The group of people looked at me with a rather indescribable gaze, but they were eventually scared away. I turned around and comforted him gently. "Senior Xie, they've left. You don't have to be afraid anymore." He slightly raised his eyebrows, and I didn't know what he was smiling about. "Then should I thank you?" I shook my head generously and said, "You're welcome. Why did they surround you? Do you need me to accompany you to the police station?" Xieyuqin didn't show the slightest sign of being frightened. He walked beside me in a carefree manner and said, "I owed them money. I'll pay it back for you." I didn't hesitate to take up the offer. Xieyuqin stopped and sized me up for a long while. "What do you mean? Are you going to keep me? What an intimate relationship." The heat rose to the tips of my ears, and my hands nervously clutched the hem of my skirt. "Yes, I'm quite rich." Xieyuqin casually raised the corners of his lips, which was extremely charming. "Sorry, junior student, I don't sell my body." I was rejected in a roundabout way, but before we parted, I quietly stuffed a bank card without a password and with a limit of 50,000 yuan into his coat pocket. At that time, I just hoped that he could pay off the debt as soon as possible and avoid getting beaten again. The next time I saw him was 3 days later. Xieyuqin sneered, "Do you know how much effort I put into finding you?" Oh, I forgot to tell him my major and name that day. I thought he was coming to return the money, but Xieyuqin said that the situation of me secretly giving him money counted as forcibly keeping him, and he had to fulfill his obligations. From that day on, when he didn't have classes, he would go to my small apartment off campus to cook for me. On weekends, he would also accompany me to go shopping. Sometimes when he wanted to find me at school, I would seriously refuse. It was better not to let others know about this unseemly relationship, or else Xieyuqin's reputation would be ruined. Our first kiss was on the night of my 19th birthday. All the lights in the apartment were turned off. I was kneeling in front of the coffee table, waiting for Xie Yuqin to light the candles with a lighter. He knelt down beside me, struck the lighter but didn't hurry to light the candles. Dao Li, he tapped on the table with his knuckles and said in a flat tone, "Do you want to have a kiss?" I instinctively looked up at him. There was not a single glimmer of light in Xie Yuqin's silent eyes, like an undercurrent lurking beneath the calm sea surface. I was left feeling at a loss and stammered, "Okay." Xie Yuqin closed the lighter cover and extinguished the flame with a bang. He leaned over, and our 4 lips rubbed against each other. My first kiss was a bit inexperienced. Xie Yuqin and I kissed on and off for a long time, but at most, it was just a gentle suck on the lips. In the beginning, Xie Yuqin didn't take my money. When I asked, he just said that he hadn't spent all the money in that card yet. But once, after he heard that Song Yoon was keeping 4 male models at the same time, he mercilessly raised the price. Before that, I occasionally had the illusion that I was in a relationship with him. After the price increase, he would urge me to give him money every month. I finally became convinced that he only liked my money. In the evening, Xu Che and I parted outside the piano room. I walked towards the school gate, planning to go out and have a bowl of small wontons. The conversation between 2 girls not far away caught my attention. "Do you think the person at the door of the KTV just now won't be beaten to death?" "Right, who knows? It serves him right for not paying back the money." I heard he's the heartthrob of a junior year department. This isn't the first time he's owed debt. I stopped in my tracks. The 2 girls were chatting intently and didn't notice me. "You don't know, do you? That boy is said to have a sugar mommy. Now that he's been beaten beyond recognition, his sugar mommy will surely dump him." The most famous heartthrob in the junior year was Xie Yuqin. Before I knew it, I was already rushing towards the KTV. There were a lot of onlookers at the door, but none of them dared to step forward. A group of thugs formed a circle, and I couldn't see the person inside at all. "Stop hitting him." I called out to them unsteadily. "I've already called the police." "Go ahead and call." The leader sneered, "If he doesn't pay back the money, I'll kill him sooner or later. I'll pay it back for him." It didn't matter. I could still sell a few of my bags. "Who is he to you?" "He's my boyfriend," I said word by word. "Xie Yuqin is my boyfriend." I didn't understand why I blurted out boyfriend instead of friend or classmate. Maybe it was because in countless moments when I was with Xie Yuqin, I felt like we were in a relationship. The man's shiny bald head reflected a question mark. Who the hell is Xie Yuqin? I was even more stunned than him. She got the wrong person. Xie Yuqin, who was safe and sound, emerged from somewhere. I stood there with a blank expression. Just then, the police car also arrived, and Xie Yuqin directly pulled me back to the small apartment. As soon as we entered the door, he picked me up and placed me on the cabinet in the entrance hall. He propped his hands on both sides of me and slowly settled the score with me. "You're quite interesting, boyfriend." Xie Yuqin didn't forget to sneer. "You left your boyfriend behind and stayed in the piano room with another guy for 3 hours. Is this how you treat your boyfriend?" I pushed his arm, trying to jump down. I just said it casually. "If you're okay, you can leave. Don't come here anymore. I'm going to change the door password." The boy pressed me back again. My back was tightly against the wall, and he leaned down on me. His lips lingered beside my face. And he said in a low voice, "Do you want to deny our relationship?" After saying that, he gently bit the tip of my nose. My emotions had reached the breaking point, and tears fell uncontrollably. Xie Yuqin was stunned. I let myself cry out loud and pounded his shoulders randomly. "Don't touch me. When I liked you and asked if you wanted to be in a relationship, you refused me every time and took all my money. Now that I have no money and don't want to like you anymore, you're pestering me again. You clearly don't like me. What are you doing now?" Xie Yuqin pressed his lips tightly and didn't move. After a while, I was too tired from crying to hit him anymore. Xie Yuqin lifted my 2 legs and wrapped them around his waist. In a position like a koala hugging a tree branch, I was carried to the sofa and sat down. Xie Yuqin gently kissed the corner of my eye and then pulled back. He looked at me with a gaze as if I were a child throwing a tantrum. He smiled helplessly and said, "I've been in a relationship with my girlfriend for half a year, and she treats me like a gigolo. Do you really think I can kiss a girl I don't like?" I had my reasons and said, "It's because I give you money." After thinking for a moment, I added rigorously, "A lot of money." Xie Yuqin laughed out loud. He didn't refute immediately but slowly opened the online banking app and showed me the balance of a card. I was stunned and asked in disbelief, "What's this? Is this all the money you've received from me?" "Yes," Xiao Qin drawled lazily and said half-jokingly, "I didn't dare to spend it, in case one day you fall for another man, dump me, and even ask for the money back." I wrinkled my nose. Why was Xiao Qin always so jealous? Xiao Qin confessed everything to me. For example, he wasn't having dinner alone with that girl this afternoon but having a dinner party with several club presidents. Another example was that on the day I saved him like a hero, he wasn't being chased for debt by thugs at all. Instead, the bodyguards sent by his extremely wealthy grandfather were trying to catch him back to receive the family punishment. And another example, he always suspected that I would be like Song Yoon and keep several people at the same time. So he raised the price crazily. I was furious. Why do you always suspect that I'm fickle? I've only liked you from beginning to end. Otherwise, Xiao Qin's gaze fixed on me gradually darkened. Before I could finish speaking, he kissed me heavily. Without giving me time to relax, he pried open my mouth, and our lips and tongues intertwined. His hands were no longer just stroking my waist. It was a completely unfamiliar experience that could numb my nerves. The whole process was like riding a roller coaster. The carriages were about to stop just as they were climbing to the highest point, stuck in mid-air. The player was desperately in need of the administrator to manually push the control lever, but the administrator instead released his hand maliciously. Xiao Qin casually accused me, "You've soiled the sofa." I was so anxious that I didn't know what to do. I reached out and hugged his neck, begging, "Xiao Qin, don't bully me anymore." He rubbed the corner of my eye with his fingertips and sneered softly, "Why are you crying? You clearly like it." Only after I was half coerced and half persuaded to admit that I liked him did he pick me up and carry me to the bedroom. Xiao Qin's dark eyes locked me tightly under his gaze. The emotions in his eyes were as intense as a storm about to break out, but he still looked calm on the surface. Later, he even blamed me in a hoarse voice for soiling the bedsheets, the desk, and the bay window on the balcony. The next morning, I woke up earlier than Xiao Qin. I fished out my phone from under the pillow and half opened my eyes to look at the unread messages, which were twice as many as usual. The incident at the KTV door yesterday had spread. Even classmates I wasn't very familiar with came to ask me if Xiao Qin was my boyfriend. When I was replying to the third person, the arm around my waist tightened. I turned around and met Xiao Qin's eyes with a faint smile. "What do you mean?" His gaze passed over my phone screen. "What do you mean Xiao Qin isn't my boyfriend?" I blinked and said, "Well, he isn't." Xiao Qin stared at me in disbelief for 2 seconds, then propped himself up on his arm and looked down at me. The thin quilt slipped down to his waist. "Then what was last night between us? A one-night stand?" Xiao Qin's expression told me that he was almost going crazy with anger. I ignored him and said, "Something like that." After saying that, I turned over and continued playing with my phone. Xiao Qin turned me over again and asked in a low voice, "Why?" "Because I haven't forgiven you yet." I was glad I wasn't a balloon, or I would have exploded long ago. Xiao Qin actually pretended to be poor and deceived me for half a year. I couldn't forgive him so easily. Absolutely not. It was absolutely impossible. After I had enough rest, I got up, picked up the clothes on the carpet, put them on, and went back to school. Xiao Qin half reclined on the bedside, and his sinister gaze was like that of someone looking at a heartless woman who had abandoned him after sleeping with him. In the afternoon of that day, the club members went on a team-building activity to an escape room. There were 8 people for each theme. I didn't know if it was a coincidence, but Xiao Qin and I were assigned to the last group, and the horror index of this theme was higher than that of the previous ones. I was used to playing these and wasn't afraid. But it seemed that Xiao Qin wasn't the same. Before entering the escape room, he gently tugged at my sleeve and said slowly, "Bargaining, junior student, I'm afraid of this kind of thing. I'll stick close to you later. Can you protect me?" I looked up and slowly sized up the 1.86-meter tall boy in front of me with broad shoulders and a narrow waist. I fell into a moment of thought. The vice president beside us clicked his tongue and said, "Xiao Qin, are you a coward? Is that a problem?" Xiao Qin didn't even bother to lift his eyes. Fine. Then Dao Li, if you're not afraid, you can keep an eye on your senior Xie. We have to take care of 4 people who are afraid of ghosts over here." I had to agree. I reluctantly told him, "Well, if you're afraid later, just close your eyes and hold on to my sleeve. I'll lead you." Xieyuqin didn't care about losing face and openly grabbed my sleeve now. He casually raised his eyebrows and said, "Thank you, junior student." So annoying. In the first 2 rooms of the escape room, there were no NPCs. Xieyuqin just held onto my sleeve and didn't react much to the dark room. He could even provide clues when we were at a loss in solving the puzzles. As soon as the door of the 3rd room was opened, an NPC suddenly popped up in front of us. The first 6 people were so scared that they fled in all directions. Screams echoed through the corridor. Xieyuqin was a bit slow-witted and slow to react. It took him 2 seconds to be scared, and in an instant, he pulled me into his arms. He bent over and buried his head in the crook of my neck. I patted his arm and said in a stiff tone, "Hey, the NPC has gone to scare the other people. You can get up now." Xieyuqin didn't believe me and held me even tighter. Even his shoulders were trembling slightly. So he was really scared. I thought he was just pretending. When I spoke again, my voice involuntarily softened. "It's okay. Don't be afraid, Xieyuqin." I raised my hand and gently stroked his back. "I'm not lying to you. I've driven the ghost away. I said I would protect you." Xieyuqin paused, and his shoulders trembled even more. I didn't know why, but the more I comforted him, the more scared he seemed to get. Just as I was at a loss, he came to his senses and released me. Xieyuqin lowered his eyes to hide his emotions, and his brows furrowed slightly. "Forget it. Dao Li, when I'm scared, I'll hug you, and that will delay you from finding clues. I'd better go with the others. I don't want to hold you back." Xieyuqin rarely had such a solemn expression. He took a step into the dark corridor but then retreated with a shudder. I grabbed his hand, unable to hold back my soft heart. "What do you mean by holding me back? All 6 of them are scared. What if they all run away and leave you behind?" I felt a bit awkward, and my voice also dropped. "It's okay if you hug me when you're scared." I held his hand and walked while saying dryly, "Xieyuqin, you're so strange. You didn't hug me less before. Why are you being so polite all of a sudden?" Xieyuqin lazily followed behind me. "Because I don't have that status anymore. Didn't you say you didn't want me?" I forgot about that. I almost thought things were still the same as before. I pressed my lips together and stopped talking, focusing on finding clues to open the door. Finally, we escaped from the escape room, and I let out a long sigh of relief. "Hey, what's going on with you two?" The vice president pointed at the hands that Xieyuqin and I were still holding and smiled meaningfully. "Didn't you say you're not a couple? You're still pretending to us." I instinctively let go of Xieyuqin's hand. My mind was racing, trying to come up with a convincing reason. Xieyuqin had already slowly opened his mouth. "We're indeed not a couple," he said calmly. "I'm pursuing her." Since then, Xieyuqin no longer avoided anything. He became more and more thick-skinned and would stick to me even during classes, meetings, and club activities. It was really annoying. One rare night, he went to a friend's birthday party and didn't pester me. But soon, I received a video from a friend. The lighting in the private room was dim, but I still saw Xieyuqin at a glance. He was holding an ashtray in his hand and smashing it on another boy's head. His actions were resolute. Without the slightest scruple, there were a bunch of people around trying to stop the fight, and it was in a complete mess. Dao, my boyfriend, was also at the scene. He said that Senior Xie started the fight because someone spoke ill of you. The boy who was beaten was drunk and mentioned me. He said that Xieyuqin had been pursuing me for so long, but I was still playing hard to get and refusing. I was just pretending to be high and mighty on purpose. The boy burped drunkenly. Damn it. For a girl like this, one good beating will make her behave. Almost the next second, the ashtray was thrown at his head. Xieyuqin kicked aside the coffee table and pinned the boy to the ground and started hitting him. Each punch was harder than the last, and he was really going all out. I was afraid that things would get out of hand, so I wanted to call Xieyuqin. Fortunately, my friend said that the beaten boy had already been taken to a clinic for bandaging and that it wasn't a big deal. I curled up in my small reclining chair and watched the blurry video over and over again. When I didn't know how many times I had watched it, an incoming call popped up on the top of the screen. It was Xieyuqin. "Not asleep yet?" "Yeah," I replied absent-mindedly. "I'm downstairs of your dormitory. I brought you a cake." I specifically changed into a fluffy sherry my thick pajamas and looked at myself in the mirror before going downstairs. The boy was standing beside the street lamp. Wearing only a thin coat over his grayish-white hoodie, he had a sense of quiet and clear loneliness. It was hard to associate him with the fierce person in the video. I took the bag from his hand. Inside was a box of cherry cake. I just glanced at it and asked him in a low voice, "Did you have a good time tonight?" Xie Yuqin's expression didn't change. It was okay. He was even as carefree as ever. Almost everyone except me brought their significant other. I was bored being alone, so I left early. My gaze landed on his right hand that was in his pocket. "Xie Yuqin, why don't you take your right hand out?" The boy's gaze paused. Realizing what I meant, he simply stretched out his right hand boldly. Some of the wounds on his knuckles were even still oozing blood. Xie Yuqin didn't seem to care at all. That guy had a foul mouth when he was drunk. I just helped him sober up a bit. I held his hand and stared at the wound without saying a word. Xie Yuqin wasn't a weakling. I was the soft-hearted one, because I was already so soft-hearted that I wanted to forgive him. Xie Yuqin seemed to know what I was thinking. He smiled and said, "It's just a minor injury, baby. Since you're still angry, I'll keep pursuing you for a while longer. It's only natural for me to beat him up. Don't take it to heart." I should have warned him that he wasn't qualified to call me that now, but I didn't want to argue with him today, for the sake of the cherry cake. Although Xie Yuqin had returned all the money I had given him when I was keeping him, I was still on the verge of bankruptcy after all. Besides being Shu Chei's piano teacher, I found another part-time job. I was making cakes at a dessert shop on the main commercial street outside the school. Compared to the piano that my mother forced me to learn, making cakes was what I was best at and my favorite hobby. The business of the dessert shop was average, so most of the time, I was alone in the store. The boss only came to the store in the first few days and then never showed up again. I called my dad, who was on a business trip in Finland, maybe the last business deal, and said, "Dad, I'm working at a dessert shop now." "What? Did you open a dessert shop?" I was speechless. Just as I was about to tell him that I could already earn money to support myself, he interrupted me and hung up the phone in a hurry. "Ancestor, your expenses are so high that I really can't scold you. Okay, go and have fun on your own. Your dad is busy with a meeting." I was really wronged. At this time, Shu Chei sent me 2 more messages. "Dao Dao, I'll bring a friend over later. Please prepare 2 hot drinks and desserts for us." The shop was finally going to have customers today. My fighting spirit was reignited, and I put on my Peter Rabbit apron and started working hard. When Shu Chei and the other person arrived, I had just placed 2 raspberry cheesecakes on the table. There was a girl behind Shu Chei whom I had never seen before. "Who is this?" The girl looked at me. Shu Chei smiled naturally and said, "My girlfriend." I turned my head mechanically. I looked at Shu Chei as if he were a dead person. When he walked up to me, I realized that his smile had frozen. My mom insisted on matching me with her. "Dao Dao, please help me. It will only take half an hour at most. I'll triple your salary next month." The temptation of money was really too great. I nodded very reluctantly. Although I hadn't gotten back together with Xie Yuqin yet, I still felt something was strange. I felt an indescribable sense of guilt. And this faint sense of guilt expanded countless times when Xie Yuqin suddenly appeared in the store. I seemed to still be sitting next to Shu Chei, but in fact, I had been feeling uneasy for a while. Xie Yuqin's gaze passed over the 3 of us indifferently. He walked closer, raised the back of his hand, and rubbed my side face as if no one else was there. "You got flour on your face." The girl frowned in confusion. "Who is this?" Without thinking, I blurted out, "My brother." Xie Yuqin raised his eyes and looked at me quietly. The girl nodded in understanding. "A brother is more attentive than a boyfriend. Shu Chei, didn't you notice that your girlfriend had flour on her face?" "Oh no, girlfriend, huh?" Xie Yuqin smiled faintly, and his eyes seemed to be saying, "You're really something, Dao Li." Fortunately, he didn't expose us on the spot. After Shu Chei and the girl left, I immediately explained the whole story clearly. I said firmly, "I've never liked Shu Chei." Surprisingly, Xie Yuqin didn't seem to care. He casually raised his eyebrows to indicate that he understood. Going back to the apartment after work, he asked me politely, "I want to try the cake you made with your own hands. Is that okay?" I suppressed the little bit of disappointment and nodded, "Sure." Since there were some ingredients and utensils missing in the apartment, after reporting to the boss via WeChat, I packed some things from the store and took them home. This boss was really nice and easygoing, almost always saying yes to my requests. When I was folding the apron and planning to put it in my bag, Xie Yuqin came over and said, "You don't need to take this." He looked at me and said, "I bought one for you." I let out an "oh" and put the apron back in place. I had noticed half a year ago that Xieyuqin was very considerate in many things, but this time, I was overthinking it. I looked at the apron on me in the mirror and pursed my lips. Not very satisfied, I started to explain to Xieyuqin, "Don't buy this kind of lace apron next time. It's flashy but not practical and can easily get snagged and broken." After I finished speaking, I saw him staring at me without saying a word. I poked his side face unhappily. "Remember?" He nodded indifferently, brushed the stray hair by my ear with his hand, and murmured in a low voice, "I also bought a hair scarf. Do you want to wear it?" It was a triangular hair scarf of the same lace style. I tried it on. I liked it so much that I didn't want to take it off. However, were these sold in the supermarket? I didn't dwell on it anymore and went into the kitchen to start preparing. Xieyuqin came out of the shower while I was kneading the dough. He hugged me from behind. "You look cute." He commented on my apron and hair scarf. I struggled a bit. "Xieyuqin, don't disturb me. I'm not Xieyuqin." He pressed his chin against the crook of my neck, and his low, hoarse voice sounded a bit cold at the moment. "Baby, I'm your brother." The sword hanging over my head finally dropped. The matter of pretending to be Shuchei's girlfriend wasn't going to be easily overlooked by him. Xieyuqin like this. The invisible aggression around him scared me so much that I didn't dare to move. Xieyuqin seemed to be completely unaware of my sudden stiffness. "What are you doing?" "Kneading the dough." I could only answer obediently. "The steps to make a cake, yeah." He rubbed his nose against my ear. "Teach me." Xieyuqin wasn't really serious about learning how to make a cake. Even so, he could still calmly refute my opinions at every stage. "Is this not how you knead the dough? Let's forget about the cream. It's not very clean. This works on the same principle as a mixer." I couldn't help it and wanted to reach out and cover the mouth of the person behind me. "Xieyuqin, can you please stop talking? I'm your brother," he corrected me. If I didn't call him brother, Xieyuqin wouldn't give me any chance to negotiate. I had to give in. "Brother, I'll never pretend to be someone else's girlfriend again." "What else?" At this moment, I didn't have much ability to think. "What else? Do you want to be in a relationship with me?" I nodded eagerly. "Yes." Xieyuqin was satisfied and stopped saying things that made me feel embarrassed. It was only then that I realized he actually had many hidden hobbies. For example, there were some unspeakable clothes hanging in the innermost part of the closet. I woke up at 11:30 the next day. I was the only one in the bedroom. I woke up instantly and took out my phone, planning to call the boss and apologize. But at 6 o'clock in the morning, the boss had already sent me a message, informing me that the dessert shop would be closed for 2 days. I let out a sigh of relief and stuffed myself back into the quilt to stay in bed. When I scrolled up the chat window, I saw an unread message from my dad at 10 o'clock last night. He had already returned from Finland. I got up, washed up, called Xieyuqin, who was having a class at school, and then went straight home. I couldn't wait to share my experience of working hard to earn money with my dad. He put his fingers on the bridge of his nose and fell into thought. After a while, he asked me cautiously, "Is it because I haven't transferred your pocket money this month that you thought our family was going to go bankrupt?" I looked at him in disbelief. I jumped up from the sofa with a whoosh. "You said it yourself." I was so excited that my bangs were fluttering as I recreated the scene for him. That day, just like usual, I put my hands together and asked him for my living expenses. "Thank you, Dad. I love you the most. Please give me an extra 50,000 yuan this month." I had no choice. Xieyuqin always took 80% of my money, and I didn't even have enough money to buy a bag. He reluctantly transferred the money to me. He was still muttering very softly, "Lily, there's a high probability that our family is going to go bankrupt," although I didn't hear the middle part clearly, but it should have been something about the company having problems. Now that I thought about it, I realized something was wrong. The middle-aged father was so angry that his temples were throbbing. "Didn't you listen carefully when I was talking to you? I meant that if your pocket money keeps increasing by 50,000 yuan every month, there's a high probability that our family will go bankrupt." I had never felt so complicated. Anyway, the surprise brought by the news that the bankruptcy crisis was fake overwhelmed all other feelings. I kissed my dad on his shiny bald forehead and then rushed back to school to find Xieyuqin. He was having a meeting in the club office. The vice president was discussing the event venue with him. "Okay, I understand. It's almost time for lunch. Let's go out and eat something." Xie Yuqin's posture leaning back in the swivel chair was not very proper, and what he said was even more annoying. Yes, Dao Li is my girlfriend, the vice president, who asked. I'm asking if you're going out to eat. There was a hint of superiority in Xie Yuqin's tone. Of course, I'm waiting for my girlfriend to eat with me. Get lost, get lost. The vice president couldn't stand it anymore. I also felt quite embarrassed when I heard this outside the door. Throughout the whole day, Xie Yuqin was like a peacock spreading its feathers. He almost announced our relationship to every one of his friends, especially when facing Shu Che. Xie Yuqin gently threatened me 3 times not to speak. He pulled me behind him and lazily curled his lips. He said to Shu Che, "My girlfriend asked me to tell you that she's not bankrupt. You'd better find someone else as your piano teacher, junior student." Shu Che had a blank expression and his gaze passed over Xie Yuqin to look at me. "Dao Dao, what on earth is going on?" Xie Yuqin blocked his line of sight again and smiled condescendingly as he informed, "Her matters are my matters. Junior student, isn't it okay for you to talk to me directly if you have any problems?" Shu Che stared at him expressionlessly for 2 seconds and then sneered, "Fine, then I'll tell you directly, it's nothing much, I just want to persuade Dao Dao to think it through. After all, being in a relationship is different from a sugar baby relationship. You can have several men when you're keeping someone, but you can only have one when you're in a relationship. By the way, Dao Dao, did you see Song Yoon's Moments post yesterday? A new batch of male models came to the club, and they're even better looking than Senior Xie." When Shu Che left with a sneer, Xie Yuqin's face was so gloomy that it seemed as if water could drip from it, especially when he caught me clicking on Song Yoon's Moments out of curiosity that night. "It's not, Xie Yuqin, I can explain." I futilely shrank into the quilt. He turned around and opened the innermost cabinet. "Do you want to choose or should I?" There were some accessories that matched the dresses, and I had no idea where they should be worn. To avoid Xie Yuqin going crazy, I hugged the quilt shivering and sat up to pick the dress with the most fabric. "Xie Yuqin, look how obedient I am. Can we go to bed before 2 o'clock tonight?" His Adam's apple rolled, and he replied in a hoarse voice, "I'll try my best." I was mentally prepared for the worst-case scenario like the previous 2 times, where we wouldn't go to bed until 3 o'clock. But it was obvious that I hadn't prepared enough. It turned out that the clothes were meant to be torn. The sound of the fabric being torn completely brought out the dark side of Xie Yuqin's heart. I vaguely remember that I seemed to see the sunrise that day. The end.